This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from our Patreon community. This question comes from Robert Tompkins. And Robert makes a very interesting point, as he also states a strong feeling and opinion that he has. He understands advocacy for worker co-ops, but he is concerned, and he thinks he may have heard me say something like it's appropriate or perhaps even necessary for the government in some society to impose a transition away from the capitalist structure of enterprises, a small group of people making the decisions, owning the enterprise and all of that, and a vast group of employees who are told what to do and when to do it, but who have no say over what happens to the fruits of their labor. The transition from that capitalist system to a worker co-op based system. So let me be as clear as I know how to be. This is not a transition that can be forced on people, or at least I certainly wouldn't support forcing it, and I doubt it's doable even if there was a determined effort to do so. Robert points to one, I think, of two possible illustrations for what he's worried about. Stalin in Russia, who did try to force late in the 1920s, early in the 1930s, he did try to force what came to be called the collectivization of agriculture, the aggregation of individual farmers into collectives who had to work as a unit. Most of those collectives, and I have done this research myself, were never worker co-ops. They were very top-down. They were groups rather than individuals, but they weren't the kind of worker co-op in reality that I advocate for. So that takes care of that particular effort. And it was forced by Stalin, and there was massive resistance, and Stalin had to accommodate that resistance. That's the history of the Soviet Union. And the other example often pointed to is early after the Chinese Revolution of 1949, Mao Zedong, the leader at the time, supported the development of communes, they were called, in China. And those too referred to a collective effort, but they were in most cases also not worker co-ops, or if they were, they weren't for very long. So those two examples are examples of forcing something, but it's not the worker co-op idea that we have in mind. Could a government do something to facilitate a transition? My feeling is yes, it could, and it should. I would argue, for example, that here in the United States, we have a history throughout our country, literally from our beginnings in the 18th century as an independent country, of having the government stimulate, subsidize, support capitalist enterprises all over the place, which is one reason why we have them all over the place. There was never a comparable effort to support, to develop, to facilitate, to subsidize worker co-ops. We never had a government that said, for example, that there ought to be a competition that everybody could participate in. Let us have side by side capitalist, hierarchical, top-down enterprises, the way we're used to, and side by side with them, worker co-ops, so that people could experience the difference in the quality of what they produced, the difference in the experience of going to the store or the shop, the difference in working in one environment or another, and then let us have a decision. Periodically review the decision. What portion of our economy would we like to be organized in a capitalist way, and what portion in a worker co-op way? That would have been a democratic government deciding to give its people democratic power over the kind of economic system we have. We never had that. We never had anything close to that. We've had a government that has, in a lopsided way, been the creature of, the supporter of, the foundation for a capitalist economy. And if I were in power, I would want the government to open up the options. I might remind folks that Jeremy Corbyn's government in England had a plan for this. Jeremy Corbyn didn't sit in the government, but he was the leader of a party contending for power in Britain. And he said if he did win the election, here's what he would do. He would say any business that wants to leave the country or change itself can't do so unless it gives its workers right of first refusal, that the company, before it made a basic change, would allow its workers to buy the company from whoever owned it. Shareholders, a family, didn't matter. And when reporters were critical and said, well, we have never heard of this, he smiled. And then they asked him, well, how could the workers ever pay for it? He smiled again and said the government will lend them the money. Well, governments have lent money to businesses from the beginning of the United States and of England, but they've lent them overwhelmingly to capitalist enterprises. It's so lopsided that worker co-ops have always discovered, for example, that if they go to a bank for a loan, the bank says, no, we don't know how to deal with a group of people that are running an enterprise. We have to have an individual, a board of directors. We have to have the usual. And there are thousands of laws at the local level, state level, and federal level that are literally built around capitalist enterprises as if it were the only kind. Just like the overwhelming majority of business schools teach courses to young men and women learning business as if there's only one way to organize a business, the top-down, hierarchical, very undemocratic, capitalist way. Funny in a country that, or maybe not so funny, in a country that espouses democracy as a basic principle, that the notion of a democratically organized enterprise seems weird, strange, foreign, or not relevant. All of that a government could change. I believe Robert Tompkins would be comfortable with a government that opens and facilitates a real knowledge and choice, not a government that imposes something that in the end would provoke resistance and make the whole process neither peaceful, nor democratic, nor acceptable. If discussions like these strike you as worth doing, partner with us. Share this video with others who might be interested. It's a way of extending the reach for the work we do. And if you can support us with financial help as well, that will be also very much appreciated.